Hey, buddy, not feeling well?
Oh my gosh, I am so tired.
Hey, what's the matter, champ?
I got the alert fatigue, bro.
So far, so good. Don't put your thumbs up yet, man. That's just asking for it. Oh, Lord. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
We're Drew. She's just like, hi. Please don't make me look like an idiot.
Too late.
So far, ooh, my boy Zephyrfish is in chat. Scotland represent in the house, so now it's going to be an international disaster. Yes. My name is Danny Akatsuki. Welcome to Second Order Security with Splunk. I've been streaming for 8 minutes and nothing has happened. See, this time I even waited to say anything in our work chats to see if it would screw up or not. Now, my other team members who have done shows, they've been perfect. Nothing wrong with theirs. Danny's the screw up. Well, welcome. This is the this is my little slice of the internet with Splunk. I'm what you might call a bit of an evangelist here at Splunk on the research and advocacy team. Drew, is that music too loud in your ears?
I don't hear music anymore, so it's definitely not too loud in my ears.
Fantastic. Chat, let me know if that music is too loud. That is the one thing I've yet to perfect, is that, but we're gonna get there. Well, what are you doing here? Why are we here? Why are we talking? You're doing this again?
I've never done it before, so
I'm mostly talking to myself. I'm hyping myself up at this moment.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, I have my coffee mug.
Hype.
I have my coffee mug, but it's not a Splunk mug, so I have to cover it.
I don't think I have a Splunk mug anywhere on my... Nope, nowhere on my desk.
Nope, I don't even have any Splunk swag yet.
Oh, that's a mistake.
I don't have a t-shirt. I don't have one of those cool little conf hoodies, those .conf hoodies.
Yeah, I've got my my oldest one here, 2014.
Ooh.
Never been, just had a friend bring it back, said, hey, you should really join this company someday. I finally listened to him.
Were you even born in 2014?
I was. It's amazing. In 2014,
that baby face of yours.
Yeah, it's rough. It was better. I had a beard back in 2014.
Oh.
I no longer have a beard, obviously.
All right, Zephyrfish says we're perfect so far. Yes. All right, well, we are back. Normally, I've been trying to do these at least once a week because we have so many awesome people here at Splunk. It's not like there's any shortage of security topics to talk about. And March has been a little screwy, people's schedules and going back and forth, and me trying to troubleshoot this connection. Me troubleshooting this connection, fun story. So for people who don't know about streaming, you stream through a software. This is called OBS, Open Broadcaster system, and you do it via a stream key. It's like your private key. You put it in and you stream to it. However, I'm juggling two different private keys now. I am juggling Splunk's and I'm juggling mine. So I decided, Drew, in my infinite wisdom, to try and troubleshoot my connection, figure out why it was clustered up. Pretty late at night.
I think I know where the story's going.
Yeah.
I know where the story's going.
Yeah, you do. And it was late at night, and of course me, being the cheeky little fellow that I am, I like to be creative in my titles about what I'm doing on my stream. But I'm like, it'll be fine. So, Danny,
the narrator says it was not fine.
It was not fine. Turns out what this idiot did was put a big banner on his page that says, trying to unexpletive my stream settings. And then in another window, like I have actually right over here, I have the stream up so I can monitor it with the picture and the sound or whatever. And then I was like, why isn't it playing on mine? Why isn't it playing on my Twitch? Oh God, go over and it is streaming to Splunk's Twitch in broad daylight, at broad daylight, so to speak. It was daylight somewhere at that point. And quickly had to bring that down. So off to a bang up start with
F's in
that.
chat, I think. F's in chat.
F's in chat. Yeah, that's yeah. There you go. And so that was a thing. But hey, the way I look at it, and thankfully the way my boss looked at it, the one who actually matters with it, said, "You are trailblazing this. We've never done this before. There are mistakes are bound to happen," and he is so positive. Thank you, Josh.
That's good news.
PR wasn't that mad either. PR was like, just please don't do it again. So I'm not going to do it again. At least I don't think so. But anyway, we figured it out, and now we're here, and I'm here with my dear friend, my new dear friend, Mr. Drew Church. Hi, Drew.
Hey, how you doing, Danny?
Drew, who the hell are you, and what do you do?
I am Drew. I am a consulting solutions engineer for security, supporting our federal civilian customers. Before I joined Splunk, about 18 months ago at this point, I worked for the Department of the Navy as a civilian. I worked there for about almost 10 years between my civilian time as a contractor and doing IT and security throughout that. And before that, I was much younger and worked at like a small boutique developer doing e-commerce, point-of-sale stuff. That's where I first was introduced, I think, to my first real security topic, PCI DSS. Learned a lot about that. Learned why you should, PCI, man, that was what a disaster. So I feel for anybody dealing that.
So the main reason that I wanted to have Drew on, well, one, I kind of owed him. I don't.
You really owe me, Danny.
Now, I'm not totally sure if we could consider this payment or not, or just more BS for me to put you through. So, Drew's a bit of a cheeky monkey himself, and we of course have a work chat, and Drew had been giving me quite the thrashing in his very dry wit way, which you'll get much of in the next hour, especially if my buddy Doug joins us too, and giving me quite the very dry thrashing in the Slack. So I decided, now you've just heard his credentials. He knows what he's talking about. He's been doing this for half of a minute already. So I decided to go out and do my favorite thing that I normally say for actual new people on Twitter. And I say, hey, I have a buddy of mine. He's a real go-getter, trying to get into security, but he's got a lot of pluck and he's got a lot of promise. If you were going to give entry-level advice to this person, Mr. Drew Church, what would you give him? Which, to me, I'm just kind of chuckling to myself, because we're hackers. We all know what that does. Like,
and like, it's not like, Danny, it's not like, you've got 80 million followers. You have a lot, but it's not like this. But then what happens, Danny?
Yeah. Well, what had happened was, yes, and again, thank you for humbling me already. He's like, first of all, you don't have 1 million. No, 16,000. That's, but that's neither here nor there. Who is to pick up that topic, but Swift on security. And when Swift on security, not only do they comment, they retweet it. And then all of a sudden, Drew, you're not on Twitter that much. You're on, but you're not like on all the time, right? You're not.
I'm not. Hashtag infosec. That's
right.
Not my thing. I'm not red team fit or anything. I'm not that cool.
How dare you? So then when he comes back on a few days later, he had just hit a whole bunch of notifications, didn't you, Drew?
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of notifications.
And I remember I was sitting in the gym. And just trying to get my day going, and Drew's like, what did you do? And he was like, what is, and then I'd almost forgotten about it. So anyway, that's how you control your friends, ladies and gentlemen. If somebody like Swift will pick it up, you get a whole bunch of retweets. But anyway, I figured, hey Drew, why don't you come on and I'll actually talk about some serious stuff with you.
Absolutely.
And as much as we can raise profiles around here, sure, why not? So here's where I come at it. So the title of this show is Mortal Compliance, because I thought it was clever.
Good.
Thank you. I came up with it this morning because they make me submit abstracts for my shows, and I hadn't done it yet, so I came up with that this morning. I don't really know, for all that I've done in security, I've never done compliance. I've never done PCI or NIST, or I don't check boxes, like, and you know what, right away, that's a very dismissive tone I just cast. I don't check boxes. So I don't do compliance. I don't necessarily, I'm not into, I know nothing about it, but I figured now's a good time to learn about it. So Drew and I were talking, and we're talking, oh wow, you updated all the, little back end sausages made. We have some show notes, which I added nothing to.
It's true. He added 0.
Yeah, literally 0. But then I had it up on my screen. All of a sudden, I go back over to kind of glance at it very surreptitiously, and now there's like 8 million paragraphs. So
It's bullets, not paragraphs, but there are 8 million of them.
it's pedantic. Pedantic is what he is.
100%.
So, why do you like doing it?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's my thing.
It is.
Totally my
it is
thing.
by far one of the biggest kicking things that we have in security. Like, compliance, blah 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 blah. But why? Why? I mean, I know it's got to get done.
It's the foundation of everything, right? So the compliance, like the proving compliance, is like the thing that everyone hates. It's not actually being compliant everyone hates. It's what it means to be compliant with whatever framework you're working in, whatever control set, whatever that happens to be. Like, that's the part, like the paperwork that everyone doesn't want to do. But actually hardening your systems, like, that's a thing that hopefully you find fun if you're working in security, at least on the blue side.
I don't think it's fun though.
It's great. It's great. Checking boxes that says, hey, make sure that the password policy meets these requirements. It's just beautiful.
Somebody in chat.
You just check the box. It's like, where else in IT, Danny, can you actually say you did something? Like, you're done, right?
Oh,
hey, you close the ticket. Oh, sure, but it's just something's going to break again. Hey, I actually said that this box is now compliant with whatever standard across the baseline. Like, you're done. At least until the baseline changes.
Somebody in chat, Code Blue 666 says, cries in CMMC.
Cyber Maturity Model Certification.
What the hell is that?
That is the latest and greatest coming out of the U.S. Department of Defense. I know we have a global audience. I'll try and be as global as I possibly can.
Super global, all 12 of us.
Yeah. But the Defense Industrial Base in the United States has to maintain a certain level of security and information systems. They've tried this a number of different ways, from DFARS compliance to using a subset of the RMF controls and 800-171, all this fun stuff, right? CMMC is just a 5-level certification where essentially, depending on what type of information you're processing, what level of the contract that you're supporting with the U.S. government is, you're having to do this, and there's a whole audit process with a 3PAO or 3-party audit official. Like, it's a whole process. And so anybody like Code Blue there that's dealing with CMMC, I apologize, but it's important. It is really important.
FIPS, FISMA, let's go, is something that Golgos just said in chat.
Good old federal stuff, it sounds like, is 100% federal. It is absolutely federal, but very specifically focused on the defense industrial base in the U.S. government, right? So different set of standards, and you're dealing with FISMA.
That takes a special kind of person, I think, all jokes aside. So I was in the gov space for literally 5 seconds. Thank you to our friend Mick for starting me out. It's one of my first security, actually was my first security gig ever. And that has scared me off since. It's been a decade. Won't go back. I don't know if that particular arm is one of our people, so I'm not gonna talk about them. But I said, oh my God, I can't handle this. What's fun about it for you? Like, what do you see now? Do you only work in the government compliance space, or do you also do compliance work with like the is it considered public or private? Enterprise is a private sector?
Well, I mean, yeah, they might be publicly traded, but private industry, private companies, absolutely. But to kind of answer the question is, I work mostly with our public sector customers. I will say one of the gaps I have in my security background, especially compliance, is working with business. And it's just, I haven't had the opportunity. And as you mentioned, it takes a special kind of person, and so I like doing this, and so I don't want to stop doing that, if that makes sense. Is like, I know that people need to do it, and they need people to want to do it. So I'm happy to be a part of that conversation.
We also have joining in the chat, I didn't see him, Doug. How long have you been here?
Feels like years, but it's
like
going
60
to be
seconds tops.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wait,
cool.
Oh, at Splunk or on the call?
On the call?
I'm always lurking. You got to be careful.
Because I realized when I started, Zoom never wants to keep my settings. So I realized when I started, I had it in speaker view, which means the only person who's talking you can see. And then I was like, where the hell's Doug? Why hasn't Doug come back yet?
I'm an insider threat. I after I get my toe hold, I move laterally inside the Zoom, and you don't see me as I blend in with the rest of the speakers.
Should we just kick him off the Zoom right now for that?
We should. One of these days, right, gonna have to play with Skype. Remember good old Skype before Teams was a thing? You can set up NDI sources from Skype to do this, so you have like individual inputs from the. It's crazy if you've never played with it.
Did you? One of the best. I was working with a guy that was a link in unified messaging.
Oh God.
Skype expert, and he's like, "Yeah, here are the firewall like diagrams that you need to set up." It just looked like there was arrows attacking the firewalls from both sides. It was the most insane.
Have you ever seen? Speaking of Microsoft products, have you ever seen the System Center Configuration Manager? Most people call it CCM. Though I would argue that I think Microsoft's documentation calls it Config Manager as the, and I think the product just changed names. Anyway, if you look at the ports and protocols chart for that, which is a very compliance relevant topic, by the way, it's like if you remember the old back in the WoW days, you'd see like how to do. Feral Cat DPS and Burning Crusade, and there's like a bunch of arrows going all over the place, and it says John blanking Madden in the middle of it. Great meme from back in the WoW days. Anyway, that's what Configuration Manager ports and protocols. It's the same thing. I don't know how anybody does it.
I don't know.
Is that why you're such a zero trust? Person?
No, we're not doing this right now, Doug. We're not doing this.
What?
We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the other thing. The other thing I like talking about, not that other thing. That's not today. That's next week or something.
That's probably. No. What do we got? I don't think I have anything next week. Oh, I have Dave Harold next week. By the way, anybody who's ever heard of Boss of the Sock, I got that guy on next week.
The Boss Father.
The Boss Father. That's exactly what it is.
Why have I not heard that before? That makes so much sense. Dave Harold is the reason I'm crashing this party right now. He was the one who pulled me aside at the Boulder office just opened. Said, "Hey, you should check out Splunk. You should come work for us." And here I am.
Cool story, bro.
That's great, isn't it? We talk about NIST 800 here. What did I miss?
We should probably talk actually about what we wanted, had promised our viewers to talk about. But
okay,
are we doing control by control differences between revision 1 through?
We're not getting there yet, Doug. Drew just explained
honestly,
to me the basics of compliance at the moment.
So I will say, I think talking like you asked, are you a public guy? Are you a private guy?
Yes.
Like, what are you doing? And it's mostly been federal, like U.S. federal government and Department of Defense customers, and so they've centered around the National Institute of Standards and Technology 853. That's a special publication. The 800 series pubs I actually really like. Very approachable if you're in this business. Anyway, so 853 defines the Risk Management Framework, or RMF, and so RMF is a six-stage, right? So at the beginning, you're identifying the system, which is really not like a stage, but right, hey, there's a system I need to do this thing on, right? And then you go into this cycle where you're categorizing the system and saying, hey, what kind of information is being processed? What's going on here? Then you're going to say, hey, and that's a negotiation. And there are so many stakeholders in this process, right? But essentially you're saying, hey, what is this information system? And you're going to come up with what's called the high water mark from a control set. What needs to be high, medium, low? So it tells you what controls you need to implement, right? So maybe this isn't applicable, right? Because that's for a high confidentiality system, and yours is not a high confidentiality system because you're working with public data, for example. Then you move into this process where you're selecting those controls. So you're saying here from those controls, like here's the baseline. Maybe I need to add some in, or maybe I need to go to negotiate with my authorizing official or my risk executive, saying, hey, I'm actually not going to do this on this particular system, and here's why, and get that concurrence. Then you move into actually doing the technical work, which is implementing those controls. You're saying, hey, I'm actually turn this on. Here are the things like the password policies I've set, all that fun stuff. Then you move into that assessment process where you have a third party. It should be an independent person, right? You don't want the foxes, inspecting the foxes. That doesn't work very well. Then you move into a formal process of authorizing the system, and then if you've done everything perfectly, you get that authorization to operate, and now you're into a monitoring phase where you're saying, hey, I'm going to make sure that the controls are doing exactly what I said they're going to do, that my password policy is working, that my firewall rules are working, that my micro segmentation is protecting lateral movement so that Doug Brush can't join the Zoom, whatever it happens to be, right? That process, regardless of whatever controls, whatever frameworks you're using, it's all pretty much like that. There's bits and bobs and different flavors of all that, but there's a process very similar to that in all of these compliance frameworks.
You said there's something in the notes here that caught my eye about what's the holy grail
The holy grail.
Continuous monitoring?
Yes, right. So maybe somebody has achieved this at some point. So continuous monitoring, that stage 6, step 6 of the RMF process says, hey, everybody's agreed. Here's how we're going to maintain the thing. Here's how we're going to authorize it. Here's what the boundary looks like. Here's everything about the system. And here how we can change it in accordance with, we've all agreed that our change management process is going to look like this, and all that stuff happens. Then you enter the con monitor, continuous monitoring, where you're going to say, I'm looking at the implementation of these controls. I can self-assess. I don't need you to send in a third-party team. I can do this, and at any time you want to see these reports, here's how I'm doing this. Sometimes they're going to be manual reviews, but a lot of it's automated. It's all data-driven. Boom. That authorization's indefinite, where they just validate, yep, we're still doing this thing. They come in and do some random inspections here and there, but effectively, you don't have to go through the major heavy lift at the top of this to actually get that authorization to operate. So, like that step 6, that's the holy grail.
What do you, how often, and again, most of my questions are going to be super rudimentary here, right? Like, I have the expert that I've ever met about compliance, and me knowing nothing. How often
is there a fourth person on this call? Because it's certainly not me and Doug.
How often do you go back, like, or do you go back like the next year or whatever, and then see, hey, have you fixed the things I told you to? And this is like a problem not just with compliance, right? This is a problem with you know, pen tests and things like that. Yeah.
So part of that, wherever you're on the phases, either in the assessment phase or in the authorization phase, right, depending on where all this shakes out, you're going to come up with, at least in RMF, it's called a plan of actions and milestones, or POAM, where here are all the security deficiencies found in the system from the assessment. Maybe the control wasn't implemented correctly. Maybe there was a control that you said you were going to implement, but you had selected, but you were not able to because of timelines, cost, the part couldn't come in, whatever. And so there's going to be a schedule that essentially somebody's maintaining this POAM and saying, hey, here's how the progress I've been making. And that periodicity is all going to be kind of system by system, authorization, executive, like AO, like it's very fluid. But most organizations, they're going to be looking at that stuff at least quarterly, sometimes monthly. And then there's a year, or an annual, and usually a triannual kind of pace to that.
What are some of the...
I think... I'm reading chat, right? So Code Blue says with compliance, you can technically POAM stuff for a while. CMMC removes that though, right? So CMMC is an attestation. Hey, I'm at level 3 at this point, not like I will be at level 3 in 3 months when I close all my controls. Because effectively, in prior iterations of these compliance frameworks inside the defense industrial base, they just said, yeah, you can just POAM it, like, and if everybody agrees, right, like you just effectively, it's POAM'd indefinitely. I'm never going to do this, even though I'm going to say I am. I'm really going to be kicking that can down the road forever.
Now, with that too, with the attestations for those, does a certifying body have to come in and do like an audit like you would for an ISO 27001 or some of the other compliance frameworks to basically do that and give you the stamp of approval?
Yeah. So in CMMC, the organization's responsible for the third-party auditing, authorizing, auditing officials, assessing officials, whatever. It's an A word. 3 PAO, the number 3 PAO. Inside like a strict RMF, you're going to have what's called the security controls assessor. And if you've ever, like, why do these people do the business the way they do? Look at the assessment pubs. So for like 853, there's an 853 alpha. And like the vast majority of people do not know that publication exists. And that literally says for each control in this control set, here's how you assess that. And you have usually, you know, to what degree are you doing an observation? Are you doing an inspection? Are you doing like a questionnaire? You're interviewing? It's very cool, right? So that everyone can kind of agree on that approach. Here's how we're going to do this, because especially when we're talking to commercial customers that do have these compliance requirements, like you're going to go into an indefinite do loop and everyone's just going to spend all this money and nothing's going to happen. And that's why I think, as Danny kind of opened the show, like most people don't want to ever touch this because you never get anything done.
One of the other fallacies go ahead.
No, after you, sir.
You know, one of the things that I've seen with the adoption of risk management frameworks is that people kind of go into it with the hope of saying, I get out of almost a get out of jail free card with it. If I can go in, I can get certified as whatever framework I held to, I can just wave that in front of my vendors and stuff. I mean, does that work in the public sector where folks say, hey, look, I have FIPS compliance, whatever it is, leave me alone? Or is there additional looks from a business to business perspective where other people might say, okay, well, we want to do our own audits. It's great that you have that, but we want to look under the covers.
So in the federal government, like and the whole purpose of RMF, like there's supposed to be this concept of reciprocity, so that effectively, like, because it's a standard and everyone should be following the same standard, insert the XKCD comment about, hey, we need a new standard. Like, now there's 16 standards. Like, that reciprocity should be valid, right? We're all following the same process. Therefore, if, like, we'll just say, like, the Army and the Air Force, right? The Air Force says that, yep, they've met the requirements. Now they can go use that system with the Army. They're on an Army base. They're going to go use it, and it should be fine. That's what's supposed to happen. But that's not always what happens, especially when you're talking about, like, some people might disagree on baselines. Like, hey, I think this should be a high baseline because I'm using this system or this technology for a life safety mission, right? I'm going to make sure that when I'm putting warheads on foreheads, for example, like, that's a different conversation than processing, like, your paychecks. Both important, very important, but from a security perspective, you probably have some different sets of controls on that tactical system.
Let's move on to what is, and this is, like, again, one of the big hot potatoes, one of the big things that we kick around, the butts of jokes and things, patch management, right? Just patch. Yeah. Like, why is this so freaking hard? Just patch.
Just do the patch. Patching's hard. So vulnerability management is kind of actually where I got started in security, right? Where I moved that transition from, like, an actual, like, IT system administrator and part-time developer into security, right? Where it's, and by the way, highly recommend anybody that's doing that. That's a great place to kind of interface across the organization where you're really running that program. Like, it's not always as simple as just patch the system. When you've got SLAs, maybe you're, like, in a for-profit business, right? You're not talking, like, government systems, right? Like, downtime means you're breaking SLA. And if you haven't designed the system, architected the system, or been able to because the technology doesn't support it, you may not have high availability. So you can't just, pull half the system down, patch it, while the other system continues to carry the load and do the reverse, right? And so that's hard. But I'd say that, like, the hardest part when I was running a vulnerability management program across a couple of different organizations really was the data side of this, right? Where it's important to do, and if, like, CIS control, number one, right, know what your environment is, right? What's there? What's your catalog say? Vulnerability management, you have to know what assets you have so that you can scan the right assets, or you have to identify those vulnerabilities on those assets, right? And so there's people out there, and I think you mentioned Switch on security earlier, right? Like, there's people out there that currently run like O365 that don't know they have an on-prem Exchange environment still, because that's part of the migration process, right? So vulnerability management like helps understand that. And, like, if you are running scans, for example, I'm a big scan fan, Tenable Security Center administrator at one point or another. Right, those scans are important, but, like, folks hate them because it's a point in time. It's, like, I always said that, like, any vulnerability database, right, is, like, it's a series of point in time scans, right? And so things can change, especially in the Microsoft world, right? You install a patch, everything looks clean, they reboot the system, and, like, the DLL rolled back, and nobody knows why, and there wasn't any alert that the DLL rolled back or whatever. So it's a pain, but kind of if I, like, take off the security hat, like, it's a treadmill. It's absolutely a treadmill to our, like, the practitioners, like the IT people. They're just trying to make stuff run, and, like, they hate the weekly, monthly scans that come out. Like, I already patched that. Why is this on the report? Well, the patch, like, the report came out, like, got to somebody's desk a week ago, right? Like, that from a scan 3 days prior, and that's, like, 8 days of, like, 8 work days, and now all of a sudden, like, they did the work 3 days ago, but now they're getting dinked, and their management's asking them why it's done. So, like, that, like, big headache for most folks, and they hate that process. And Mastadigma says ICS systems, so industrial control systems like SCADA, anything like operational technology, bear to patch as well, right? When you're talking about, hey, if I mess with this Windows 7 PC, for example, right, that's embedded in this CNC or whatever, like, tool making equipment, the vendor won't support it, like, whatever. Like, so that's a whole other conversation. I don't envy anybody in that space either.
And I imagine a big part of this is having some tool in your stack, maybe Splunk, should be Splunk, about being able to have, like, a flexible reporting engine, right? Because, like, there's a lot of security tooling that just don't include that, or it's not on their road. It's on their roadmap, or it's in the back burner or something like that. But having something where you could quickly access that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it, but I kind of glossed over this fact, right? So I've been a customer of Splunk since 2011. So I have been using Splunk to do things for a far longer time than I've been at Splunk trying to help other people do Splunk things. And so, like, kind of the big thing that we ended up doing was trying to improve the accuracy of data, right, and the timeliness, right? So when you think about like the DIKW like pyramid of like data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, all that stuff, right? Like timeliness, data quality matters, and so making sure that they have the right reports that target their assets, because who wants to see a laundry list of vulnerabilities for like Bob's or Sally's area of responsibility? Like that doesn't help them. And a lot of these tools and technologies are really focused on doing the capability of getting those scans, getting them accurate, and they do a fantastic job about that. Whereas like reporting analytics of that are maybe a second or third priority. And I think that's where we were able to be so successful, right? We took in that data and said, hey, we've got a good enough over here. It works. We can verify those scans, but then like, how do I get a dashboard so somebody can just go, they log onto the dashboard and they say, here's what I need to handle. Here's the last time it was scanned. It was a good credential scan. Here are the things that matter the most in our organization, maybe because it's a CVSS 2.0 score, 10.0 or whatever, right? Like whatever the CVEs happen to be. However you kind of like do that and weight that, you can just prioritize the list. So now it becomes from the problem, the treadmill is endless, to here is the punch list of things I need to get done to secure my systems to make sure that the business of this organization can keep on trucking.
Yeah, that's the funny thing with running vuln scans and vulnerability management programs is how often we had to say, and I was an unfun person at Black Hat at the Rapid 7 and Tenable. They're like, hey, what we want to talk about our new feature. What is? I was like, did you fix the reporting? They're like, what's wrong with it? I was like, everything. It's like across the industry, I want to take data normalized out of your tool and put it in something else so I can do my own reporting. And it's been an uphill battle for 12, 15 years.
Yeah, like that. It's crazy how like it sometimes is even difficult to get that stuff into like Excel, where somebody can just write some macros and make it work, right? Like it can be very bad, and I know that they made continuous progress, but again, that's not what they're reporting is second. It's tertiary to what they're trying to do. They're trying to make sure they've got the right detections. They want to make sure they reduce false positives. They want to make the product as good as possible because their bread and butter really is detections, I think. At least that's my perspective. And I'm so glad that we get to use things like Splunk to make it better.
Well, yeah, and I think there's correlation things that we can do. You know, if we can say, okay, I want to know out of a vuln scan engine, it's not going to get flagged for open RDP ports. But if I can look at that and say, okay, well, who has open 3389 across the enterprise? Is this public facing? What's our password policy? If I can build that chain and go, oh crap, we have vulnerable systems out there that are not going to come up on a vuln scan as risky. There's just going to be information buckets. You need to be able to correlate a lot of that. A lot of stuff that I think is that you know, where you have to get in other tools is do that data correlation analysis, because out of the box, these things are not going to find evil for you automatically. You know, I'll give you a sense. I'll give you a direction of where to go.
They're going to find you a lot of evil, but it's not. It's like it's all noise. It's all noisy evil.
Yeah.
It's not what you need. It is. I mean, it is what you need, but it's not what you want to deal with. And so, how can you add that context, right? How can you say, hey, this is important, and here's why it's important, and make sure that you can get that done as quick as possible, and then like have instantaneous feedback. That loop has to be quicker than like weekly, day. Like it has to be like, hey, this is done, and it's just done, right? And everybody needs to know that.
Zach in chat says, and this is something I worry about constantly, especially when I was on an internal team, of vendor controlled appliances vulnerable. Like how do you possibly manage that? Like, is it best practice to whatever appliance you have on your in your enterprise to at least have some access to it? Are there actual appliances out there? I already know the answer to this, but this is how we set questions up in interviewing. Are there actual appliances that are strictly vendor controlled that you can't even touch? So how's that change management go for those?
So that's a loaded question, Danny.
I'd bite at it, Drew. Do it.
Here's the thing, right? Is you kind of have when you're looking at the vendor landscape, here is what they have attested to. Here's what they're providing from a code perspective, right? Like, it's next to impossible for a vendor to say that uses OpenSSL, OpenSSH, these open source libraries that all of a sudden, right, boom, remote code exploit, like, right, and they're going to patch it and they're going to push it downstream, right? It's going to take it time from Red Hat, from CentOS, from whatever the repos, and we're talking Linux for the second, right, to flow down, and then they have to go through that QA process, right, inside of like the technology vendor, right? Like they have to say, hey, like, yep, they need to test it, because now all of a sudden you're running into an unsupported configuration, right? And so making sure that customers have that like trust that when they have a problem, they can come back to the vendor and say, hey, this isn't working. We're like, okay, you're in, like, here's our step-by-step process. And so I kind of see it both ways. As a customer, I worked with two. I'll say so in the DoD we call them information system security managers or officers, ISSMs, ISSOs. Two different flavors, two different camps. Hey, if it's a vendor appliance, we want to treat it like it's a black box. If by default and their secure configuration guide says disable SSH, disable all these protocols, and the only way you can access this box truthfully is through its GUI or whatever, right? This management engine is. Like, don't break into it and start vulnerability scanning it. One, because you're not going to be able to fix it because you can't just install patches, right? And all that down that road. I've worked with other people who are like, I don't care what the vendor says, do it. And those people have a lot of open things on their POAM that they can never get resolved because maybe they can't upgrade to the newest version of that appliance or whatever because they're relying on some legacy feature. Again, sort of a lot of public sector customers that do rely on legacy capability. So it's a challenging thing to weave, and I feel for anybody in that practitioner role still trying to navigate that situation because it's really a no-win on either side. They want it to work, but they also want it to be secure, and there just aren't enough hours in the day.
Masked Enigma, going back to talking about the ICS, says NERC-SIP, which I actually know what that is, gives us 35 days to patch, which is a blast. Does he mean that's a good number or a bad number? That sounds like a bad number.
So do you think, like, how easy would it be for you to take down and patch the industrial control systems that power the house that you have?
Fair.
Like,
Okay.
35 days is probably not a lot of time to get that maintenance taken care of. Like,
Fair.
we know, like, we think about what happened to the Florida water treatment plant where I think it was like Dameware and a shared password or whatever.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, those systems are critical. Like, we could talk all day about maybe not exposing them to the internet, but it takes time, and you can't just say, hey, I'm going to patch this ICS. You just can't do it. Like, because it's that human-machine interaction, right, that HMI, the interface, like, what's it doing? And maybe there can't be redundancy built in. And so it's challenging, but I mean, I think we would all agree that if that somehow that critical infrastructure program, that system was like running Exchange, like we probably need to patch it sooner than like 35 days. So it's like how do you manage that? And that's all in the business. Go ahead, Doug.
And that timeline, just to clarify too, is based on time of discovered vulnerability, right?
Generally speaking, I'm not familiar as I should be with the NERC rules at this moment. It's been a hot minute since I've taken a peek in there. I think it's from when identified to the site.
Yeah,
I think.
All right, Drew. Listen, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but somebody like you who enjoys this kind of thing, by all accounts, you look like you. I mean, you talk like you enjoy it. I would hire you for this. A sociopath like yourself, what do you do to wind down from all of this fun? You play game. I mean, you're in a gaming chair, so I assume you play some kind of games.
I do. I've got my RTX 3090 sitting in that box right behind this monitor, right? So
me and my stupid 2080 that I bought last year.
Yeah, I got lucky. I got very lucky, and that was by far the most I've ever spent on a single piece of computing equipment. And I got lucky yesterday. I actually made it into the PlayStation Direct. A PS5 should be on its way later this week. So that's one of the things. I, fortunately have not heard the 9-week-old Bernese Mountain Dog puppy sitting, like, running around the house right now. There has many barks. I've got kids and family, so it's.
You have a Bernese Mountain Dog, and I've been staring at you this whole time.
Seriously.
Yeah, like there's no way, like you don't.
And
want
Doug.
Yeah.
I can't apologize for Doug. I can apologize for myself.
Well, how much?
Why? We all do.
Put it in perspective too. Not everybody may not know about these dogs, but at 9 weeks old, how much does he weigh?
16 pounds as of last night.
And projected to be up to what?
Her mom was 130 pounds.
Yeah, let's put it in perspective. These are small horses. Sweet as all hell. I have a Boston Terrier. My sister has two the Bernese Mountain Dogs, and my little 30-pound Boston alphas them so bad. It's kind of embarrassing. I'm like, pick Buster up and throw him. Like, he's bigger.
Yeah, we've got two Cairns, two Cairn Terriers.
Yeah,
right. And so it's like they're like already outmatched, but they're far more aggressive than this like sweet puppy. But
sweet.
What tickles the brain of somebody that enjoys doing compliance, like in their rest time? Do you do puzzles? Do you enjoy like technical things like building stuff? I'm just trying to get into your head right now.
I'm right. So it's interesting. I don't know how many people actually subscribe to this, but I kind of do. Right, we are the products of our environment. My dad is a retired U.S. Navy Master Chief.
Oh, Jesus!
He worked in submarines. He was a submariner, and so he was a nuclear electrician's mate. Nukes in the Navy, they have a certain way about them, and I think I think the things that made my dad great at his job, right, like rose to the top of his craft, are the same things, right? And so it's that attention to detail. It's the like having process. Like compliance is a very heavy process, like laden process. It's like those things like resonate with me. I just like I can understand where I am at. I can understand what I have left to do. I have the framework. The left and right lateral limits, and I'm able to just like march down through there. And what I find so like I don't know, like intrinsically motivating about it, right, is I like doing it, and I know so many people don't. So anything I can do to help them, like they have to do it, and they need to do it because it's very important. Like, what can we do to like work together and make this fun? And so, like, it's for me, it's always been about bringing data to that process. It's like, hey, here's what's relevant, here's what's important. Go do these 3 things. These are the 3 things I need you to worry about this week. Don't worry about the 1,000-line item poem that I'm worrying about. That's my problem. That's not yours. I don't want you to have to feel that weight.
Right. What? I had a question in my head, and I totally just lost it. If somebody wanted to, like, say somebody a new person to our industry trying to get in, and they were trying to figure out like, I don't actually like blue team. I don't red team, blah, blah, blah. However, this thing over here, the compliance thing, interests me. What are some good resources for people that like are like you, and it just kind of hits their brain just the right way?
I would start by going to your kind of baseline training, right? Like, it's understanding, like, if you're in IT already, let's just like I'm gonna answer this question first as somebody who's kind of already in like inside of technology. Like, you're probably a subject matter expert of something, even if like you don't feel like it. You probably inside of your organization know a lot about something. Maybe that's how to patch a system on Windows. Maybe that's how to write like shell scripts on a Unix terminal, like whatever that happens to be, right? Take that and then figure out whatever the rules are in your organization or your industry, your vertical, however you want to phrase that, and say, what are the requirements there? And am I, or my piece of that, am I meeting that, right? So is there like an ISO 27001? Is there a NIST requirement? Is there a CMMC? Whatever that happens to be, am I meeting that? And start reading that, because you're going to be familiar with that technology, and you can start to see, oh, that's why that checkbox is in that GUI to configure that group policy, for example, right? They can understand the why. And they bring that flavor to it. And I think that's a great place to start. So just go look at those baselines, those configuration baselines. Go look at the policies that apply to the technology. If you've got some specialized technology from a vendor, go read their hardening guidance. Like, for example, we've got the Securing Splunk manual. Go look at that. If you're a Splunk admin, go look at that document. And there's going to be a bunch of great stuff in there. And you probably understand when you read that why it's happening. And I'm a big, explain the why kind of person. That's my leadership style. That's how I think. For somebody who doesn't know technology, it's going to be hard. But maybe you have a background in auditing, maybe you're in finance, maybe you've got some other like skill sets that are naturally applicable. But if you're somebody who loves doing the wild west, you're a very creative person who just, you've got a blue mohawk and you love to run wild, right? Like, compliance might not be the thing for you. Like, and that's okay. We don't need everybody to like it, right? And so that might not be the place. But if you do have kind of another industry, another process, another thing that you like structure, just that's when you start going and reading publications. Go read, like, honestly, I say go back to the NIST pubs. Like, I'd say like 853, like, just read the abstracts. Go pick one control and read it, and then Google the terms you don't understand, right? Like, just start there, and it will start clicking.
Who has the best? This is also a question I like, having worked at places like Amazon, things like that. Who has the best documentation you've ever read, and what documentation would you care to never read again?
I would say I really like Microsoft's documentation, especially now that everything's like, it's all moved. It's like documentation is code. If you haven't checked this out, like, everything on docs.microsoft.com right now is actually living in a GitHub repository, and you can go like do it like a PR on that and say, hey, I think you typoed something here. Like, I think their documentation is really good. like our documentation. Once I understood, because I used to work with a lot of offline systems before I sat at my desk in a hoodie all day.
Sure.
Being able to download a manual, right, and get like a PDF copy. I think that stuff's super helpful because I'm not always on a computer that has internet access. The bad people are going to remain nameless. I don't want to do them dirty.
No, that's fair. I've gotten yelled at before for saying I agreed with something.
Yeah, no, we're gonna call out those landmines for you, Danny. I like your legs on again. Now, you know, a really good set of docs was Duo before, and I haven't looked at it since I went to Cisco. But man, they just put it together from. It was a good balance between dumbed down, even if you were technical, like to give you the executive summary. Here are the steps. Here are the screenshots. All the links worked. There was white space and bullet. It was just so easy to consume that if you put it on one screen and implement it on like the docs on one and do an implementation, you just flew right through the stuff.
Yeah.
It was. That's how I'd love to see more documentation written with the audience in mind.
I will say I will name and shame one thing, and that's just bad web design, and that is when you link between like 45 different www webs. Like, there's a vendor out there that you've all probably used, and you've tried to pull up documentation on how their hardware, their software, whatever it works, and they've got like a string of like, rather than running a load balancer, they just have like a billion www like subdomains, and it sucks. And like it, like one server goes down, all of a sudden like the docs are down. Like, I think you all know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'm gonna get another message. Danny, we happen to notice your Twitter, and can you please not talk about that anymore? So the documentation that I actually enjoy reading from just I can understand. It's a very plain language. It's a pro and a con. AWS has some of the most well-written, easy to read. Like, oh, okay. My gripe is that which version is the real one? You go and look up the manual and be like, this is revision 5 and this is revision 9. But actually 9 is not the right one. Go back to 4. And so that's my only beef with that. But as far as being like digestible, hands down, whoever, like they do have a very good process for like, please write this so the normal person can read it.
Yeah, like shout out to every tech writer in the business, right? Like you are the unsung heroes of your organization. I believe that. That's actually a really great point. It's one of the last 2 points I want to close on. While I don't like compliance, I love the people that do it. Drew, good for you. I'm never doing it. That's fine.
I actually enjoy writing documentation. If somebody asks me to write something, or like, so at my last place, I was on a product team. And whenever a product would get an update or a new release, it would have X amount of features, and it'd be like, Danny, go write up these 3 features. I loved it because I write in very, and again, it's not for like, some people need highly technical in the weeds stuff. I don't write like that. I enjoy writing it going, if I was a dummy, if I knew nothing about this, however, I needed to have a good understanding. There is a very happy middle ground of being just technical enough and being just human enough. And where I enjoy writing it, where like, oh, okay, I get it. And like you said, Drew, the why, like you get the why in there and then build the world around that. I think documentation to a certain extent could be a real art form if you, if you actually, it is again, no small amount of like empathizing with who's going to be reading this thing. I actually really love, it's the same reason I like making videos and like doing like how-to videos and things like that. I like the translation of it. Drew, if you weren't doing this is a question I thought of earlier that I lost it. If you weren't doing this for a living, what would you do? Have you ever thought about that? Like,
quite a bit. I am, so there's a joke. One of our coworkers all calls me Apples. I am very much a mission-focused person. I don't care about money. I know that sounds like the most bougie thing on the planet, but I'm not motivated by money. And so I worked as a federal employee for 10 years, almost 10 years. I would go back to doing that. I actually, and again, my views don't represent my employer. The usual caveats apply, but I'm a U.S. Navy reservist. So I would, if Splunk shut down tomorrow because somebody bought us or whatever, and or I said the wrong thing on this, and the boss comes and says, "Sorry, Drew," I'd call up my CO and say, "Hey, let's go. I'll make this a full-time job." So I like to give back.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well,
it's
cool.
Way more noble. Like if Splunk shut down tomorrow, Danny and I would have less noble things to do. So don't feel bad about that.
They're like, well,
Yeah, but you can't. It's not noble, right? When it's like that's what it also makes me happy. So like, it's not super like selfless. It's like, oh, I like doing these things, and it makes it takes that part of the brain, I guess. So it's like, it's not just because it's noble. It's definitely selfish.
Yeah. Me, I would probably just write and produce used car ads, because I think I might be good at that, because that's the kind of BS that I peddle. Second calling. All right, well, very good. Thank you, everybody in chat. Zach, Enigma, everybody else. I'm scrolling up. Everybody who, Zephyrfish, everybody who tuned in. This is what I would do. I mean, honestly, this thing, because I do it on my own. I like doing little shit. I don't care if it's 5 people or 50. FYI, when Dave Kennedy come on, it was like 60, Drew, so you didn't quite meet that, but that's okay. We can't all be Dave Kennedy.
I don't have the audience that Dave Kennedy does, and
Neither do I. But
Danny keeps tagging you with Swift on security tweets.
We already talked about that. We're not bringing it up.
We're not bringing it up again. You missed it. You were late. You had some meeting you had to be at, and you missed the conversation. Doug.
It did, and for Drew's edification, it did involve former employees that within 30 seconds of the call brought up buying bunny suits and expensing them. I am not a furry. I don't know why this follows me.
All right, we really should have cut this off before I let Doug talk.
Just fade to black, Manny.
Drew, for anybody that this may pique their interest now or in the future that wants to find you, you're on Twitter, right? Not often, but you're on there.
Yeah, Drew Church. It's the easiest, lamest Twitter handle in the world, and you can also find me in the same Drew-Church on LinkedIn. All
right, very good, Doug. If for some reason somebody wants to find you.
Definitely not about a podcast.
No, not cybersecurityinterviews.com.
Okay, very good.
And Twitter. I'm trying to get more Twitter followers like Danny does. I can't get over if you folks want to get me over 1,000 people like in the next year, I'd be happy.
That's sweet. And at me, I am very uncreatively at, as my friends say, Dekaki, which is DAKACKI. But yeah. We work with Splunk. This is the show that I do pretty much every week. And next week we're going to have, if you've ever heard of Boss of the Sock, we are having Dave Harold on. And somebody else, because he added them and I forget, and I apologize, and I'll apologize when they're on the show. But yeah, if you like this, subscribe to our Twitch. I think you can subscribe to us. I don't know. Or follow us or whatever. I always tweet about it. And thank you, Mr. Church. Thank you, Mr. Brush. This was awesome. I actually did learn something. That's the other reason why I do this. I learned a lot about compliance that I kind of never wanted to know. Hang out on Zoom if you would for a couple of moments. And to everybody else, thank you very much for hanging out with us.
Hey, buddy, not feeling well?
Oh my gosh, I am so tired.
Hey, what's the matter, champ?
I got the alert fatigue, bro.